Hey guys, welcome back to the Rough Cuts Garage. Today we're going to be working on the steering box on our first gen Cummins. So the issue that I've been having lately is I went under the hood and checked the power steering fluid reservoir and it was drained of power steering fluid. I also noticed some fluid down here on the driveway. After some investigating, I've noticed that right here there's fluid that leaks from the input shaft on the steering box. So that leaks down and then follows all the way down the steering box and leaks off the end there. And then what I've noticed is the rear shock absorber here, the boot is soaked with power steering fluid, and then all back here, as you can see, trails all the way back and is spraying on the side of the truck. So what we're gonna do today is remove the Borgeson steering U-joint shaft here. We're gonna take this off, and then we're gonna back off this nut, this retaining washer nut, and then we'll replace the seals on the inside of the steering shaft, and hopefully that fixes our leaking problem with the power steering fluid. So here are the parts that we're gonna be using today. The kit is from Edelman, and this is for the input shaft seal kit for a Saginaw steering box on a first gen Cummins. And then it comes with this seal here, an O-ring seal, and then this retaining ring. And then all part numbers and links to these parts will be in the description below. So another thing that I've been applying to the input shaft side of the steering box over the last few days is some PB Blaster. So this stuff will penetrate hopefully and make it easier to get that nut off. Okay, so on top of the U-joint here that connects to the input shaft, there's a 1/2 inch nut that you need to undo. And then on this collar here, there's a 4mm, or at least a number 4 Allen key that you need to undo here. Just loosen it off. So there's a screw here that's holding this in place. It's a number 3 Allen key. Gotta undo that. So we'll leave that like that. Hopefully we can get it back on. Normally this is supposed to slide back in there. Now what we need to do is mark on each of this washer here with these little flared parts, the nut here and the housing. We got to mark. I'm going to use a punch. I'm going to punch in line all 3 of those. That way we know exactly where to tighten them back to when we pull this out. So I'm just taking this punch here, jamming it in the hole. She's starting to twist off here. Okay, so I've taken a few pictures of how I want to put this back in. I had to grind out, when I installed this steering shaft, I had to grind out a section for this nut to go on and fit. So I'm referencing that flat section needs to be basically pointing at this line. So I took a picture of that for reference. I'm gonna keep backing this out all the way, and then this should just slide out, and then we'll head off to the workbench. Okay. There we go. So here we have all the components out on the bench. So according to the instructions, this is the adjuster plug assembly. This retaining ring here that we took off is identical to the new one. That's good. And so that is what holds this top part here. So this whole top part comes up and off. So I'll throw up here on the screen a diagram of this whole thing disassembled. I don't think any of it pertains to this section. I think it's just replacing the seals in this top section here. So what we'll do is we will start taking apart the seals in this section here, and then comparing them with these seals and then placing them back in. So there's the dust shield. So in there you can see some bearings. So you're going to be very careful to not damage those. And then the thing right in front of that is the seal, and that's the same as this seal with the spring facing towards that bearing. So we're going to try and pop out the seal here. There we go. So there's the seal there with the spring in it. Spring going towards the bearing. That's what it looks like inside, and the bearing looks pretty. Bearing looks okay. We'll give it a little bit of a clean up there. The other seal to take off is this O-ring. Just got my picky tool here. Go around. And they are the same size. Okay, so I've got some power steering fluid here by Clean Flow. I was trying to find exact power steering fluid specs, but I couldn't really find any for this truck, so I'm just going to go with generic power steering fluid. Before putting all the seals and bearings back in, I'm going to give them a light coat of power steering fluid. And then we can lube up the seal as well. Okay, and then we can put the seal spring down towards the bearing. Trying to be as even as possible. And you can see that it's even all the way around on the bearing. So the seal has now been replaced. Next is the dust shield. That's this guy here. And these slots that you can see on the top are gonna go down this way. And for the dust shield, I'm just gonna go down enough so that I can slip the new retaining ring in. And we can go in here. Just like that. So right there you can see dust shield, retaining ring, snap ring, and then there's the seal and the bearing in there. And then we got to put our O-ring on. Tools. Just like that. And then we can throw this back on top. Okay, so we've got our notch lined up here as per the photo that I took. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna tighten down this nut to where our punch marks line up with the outside here, and then we'll throw on the lock nut. Alright, so I've got our punch mark in line here. I basically tightened this all the way until bottomed out and then backed it off until the notches lined up. So right here is a diagram of what you actually need to do as per the instructions for a Saginaw steering box. We've got our 3 punch marks lined up there between the lock washer, this nut here, and then this dot on the housing. I'm going to assume that that is back to the right torque specs and everything, considering I don't have the proper tools. Now what we can do is we can hook up our steering shaft. And then we can reset our screw in up here. And then this slides up here. So now everything is back together. Everything has been tightened down, and now we can top up the reservoir and then throw the wheel back on, and we will bleed the system. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jack up the other side just to the front of the truck. That way we can freely move around the wheels to bleed the power steering system when we start adding fluid. Okay, so right here's the power steering fluid reservoir, and as suspected it's empty because we drained it all out when we took out the input shaft. So put that aside. So I got a funnel here, and then you can see on the dipstick it has full cold and full hot. What we're going to do is we're going to fill it up until it goes to the cold line or just below it, and then we're going to turn the vehicle on, and then we're going to move the wheels back and forth to bleed the system of air. That should lower the level, and we'll keep topping it up. Okay, so we're up to the full hot line there. That's a good level there. So we'll put the cap back on. Okay, so we just got back from a test drive, and I have not cleaned off the steering box at all, and it looks like our job worked. So there's no fluid here underneath the input shaft, and I don't see any drips forming down here at the bottom of the steering box. So I'll keep an eye on it, and I'll keep an eye on the fluid level, but I'm pretty sure that our job works. Okay guys, that sums up the job on replacing the input shaft seals on a Saginaw steering box on a first gen Cummins. Thanks again for watching, and we hope to see you next time. Cheers.